Hello, friends. Welcome back to Transcendent Astrology and Tarot. My name is Michelle Fonda, and I'm an author, speaker, tarot reader, and astrologer. And today we're going to talk about Jupiter's transit through Gemini. And if you are interested in that, please do stay tuned. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you for subscribing below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications. And thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. I do tarot and astrology readings. You can book that at my website, michellefondanauthor.com. Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter started its journey into Gemini on March 25th at approximately 4:47 p.m. Pacific time, and it will be there until June 9th of 2025. Now, Jupiter spends approximately 12 months and some change inside each sign, traversing each sign, if you will. And the last time that Jupiter was in Gemini was from June 30th of 2012 to June 25th of 2013. So just think back to what you were doing, where you were in life, where you were living, who you were with, what kind of job did you have, what struggles were going on, what triumphs were going on in your lifetime during that time. I'll repeat those dates again, from June 30th of 2012 to June 25th of 2013. So just think back to that, because it's going to reflect a similar experience that you might have. You could experience growth from that time, certainly, because a lot of time has passed, but it will be in the exact same house that is in your natal chart. For example, for me, Jupiter in Gemini starts in my 11th house, and then it progresses into my 12th house throughout the year. And that's one of the reasons why I don't do rising sign videos for these major transits. And here's why. For me, for example, the sign Gemini is divided for me. I personally do not use whole sign houses. I find that they don't really work for me in my readings. So I use the Placidus house system. Now, there are many different types of house systems out there. So if you were to look up your natal chart, usually it's going to be using the Placidus system. That seems to be the most common when you enter your information into a website. And so you might find that if you're looking at the houses in your astrological natal chart, that oftentimes they will divide a sign either in half, in a quarter. So one sign might be represented by two houses, for example. Not all the time, but that's usually the case. So for me, giving a general reading to the public, that's the reason why I don't do, this is your rising sign, this is what it signifies, because when we do that, we're using the house system. And the problem with that is that it may not apply to each individual particularly. I'm going to take a slightly different approach, and it's something I've never done, and it's something that I was compelled to do after doing tons of research. And this is a new channel, so I'm still finding my way as far as my voice in astrology on YouTube. But I am very, very familiar with tarot. I've been practicing tarot as a reader since 2016. I've been exposed to tarot since 2015. So that's quite some time. And what I made the decision to do, because the planet Jupiter is really a benefic planet. It's called the greater benefic, meaning it usually brings luck and blessings and abundance. It's called the greater benefic, but what Jupiter really does represent is long distance travel, traveling far intellectually, expanded awareness, expanded consciousness. So we're talking about higher education, philosophy, religion, the law, the philosophical aspects of life. And so when we talk about this and we talk about Jupiter, we're usually talking about journeying afar, going much deeper and much further than you would normally go on your day-to-day life. Gemini is very much about the day-to-day life. Gemini being an air sign, it is ruled by Mercury. And according to Robert Hand, who wrote many books, but one of which is Horoscope Symbols, he really believes, as a master astrologer, that Mercury and Gemini are very closely related in their energy. Gemini being an air sign, and air moves whichever way it wants, whenever it wants, however it wants. It's going to change directions whenever, however. If you've ever been walking along a beach and you are so happy with the beautiful sunshine, but then the wind picks up, it can totally ruin your experience sometimes. Jupiter, the planet of expansion, is entering into the sign of Gemini, which is about quickness, agileness, as it is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is a planet of communication, but it's really the planet of connection. It connects one part of something to another part of something. Mercury is also equated to consciousness itself, because what is consciousness? It's connecting one thing to another thing, right? And so that's why listening, hearing, forms of communication, forms of short distance travel, getting from one place to another place, right? And it's usually short distance because of the air quality of Gemini, because Gemini does represent more or less, I know there are differing opinions on this, but it's more or less the third house, which is about starting to get out there into the world. But Mercury, like Gemini, is very much quick changing, information setting, like sending out that email really quickly, sending out that text really quickly, waiting for a response and expecting it to happen right away. But it's also about brilliant new ideas, in intelligence generating things, about bright ideas and epiphanies. And I want to try this and I want to try this. I don't want to just do one thing. And so it does not go very deep. Whereas Jupiter wants to get deep. It wants to go very deep. And what I saw in Jupiter was the hero's journey in tarot. The hero's journey meaning the first 22 cards of the tarot deck, starting with the Dreamer card or the Fool card in the major arcana. So this is where, and I've got the Angel Tarot deck by Radley Valentine here. This was my very first tarot deck ever, as I studied with Radley Valentine and Doreen Virtue, who no longer does tarot and angel cards. But I studied with both of them to become a certified angel tarot reader. And so this is the first deck I learned on. But the Dreamer card, as Jupiter starts its journey at 0 degrees Gemini, I look at Jupiter embarking upon a very long journey. A long journey where Jupiter's going to learn many things, learn how to harness this new energy. And it's not like it's new. Jupiter does this every 12 years, but it's new for this phase of Jupiter and where Jupiter is at right now, and the members of the other planetary bodies and celestial stars that Jupiter will encounter along this journey this time around in 2024 and 2025. So for that, it is like the Dreamer, the Fool. It's starting anew, starting fresh, starting at the precipice. Now, there's something else I want to say about Jupiter entering Gemini at 0 degrees at this time. Gemini is an air sign. It moves very quickly. Jupiter is about expansion of whatever it touches, as well as making things bigger. Every planet, as it represents an archetypal energy, has a good side and a bad side, if you will, or has a more favorable side and a less favorable side. Something really good would be perhaps that you might have a really nice, fancy, expensive dinner at this beautiful 5-star restaurant, and it feels really good to have this big meal and the lavishness of the meal. But sometimes if you go to a really nice, expensive, lavish restaurant and it happens to be a buffet, where you can eat as much as you want, the same energy of Jupiter could have a tendency to go overboard and get in excess and feel like I need to get everything for the money that I paid, so I'm going to eat until my heart's content, but then you feel very sick afterwards. And so sometimes Jupiter can go into the excess of energy. Another analogy that I wanted to present as Jupiter is at 0 degrees Gemini is like blowing up a balloon, because Gemini is an air sign. So you can only blow up a balloon so far, expansion of Jupiter. But if you blow it up too much, that balloon is going to burst. If you put too much air into it, that balloon absolutely is going to burst. And I'm sure you've experienced that in preparing for a party, for example. The issue with even the dreamer at this state, the dreamer going into Gemini with new hopes and dreams of what Jupiter can do in Gemini, is a check, is like, okay, you're in this very fast moving energy, this fast moving air sign. And as Jupiter moves into the 1st degree, it's like encountering the magician, which says you can manifest whatever you want. Anything that you want, you can manifest, Jupiter. Let's do it. Let me give it to you. And Jupiter is very excited in Gemini to try new things, to try new ideas, to have a multitude of inspiration through all of this newness, this freshness of Gemini. Now, of course, the ruler of Gemini, as I mentioned, is Mercury. And let's go ahead and look at the astrology for May 25th at 4:47 p.m. when we start this dreamer's journey. When we look at the chart, we see that there are some interesting aspects here already for Jupiter in Gemini at 0 degrees as we start. And I kind of like this. As we look at our chart, we see that Uranus, Jupiter are conjunct still, and then Jupiter and Venus and the Sun are all conjunct in Gemini. Now, the way I interpret this first series of conjunctions is that Uranus is still in Taurus, but it is still barely, but still conjunct Jupiter. I believe that Uranus is giving Jupiter a push forward to say, expect the unexpected, expect surprises along your journey, expect things to not be exactly what you thought, Jupiter, but move forward anyway, because this will change you. And then Venus, the planet of beauty and love and harmony and joy, is still touching Jupiter already in Gemini, with the Sun there shining a beautiful light on Venus and Jupiter, going, you can have everything your heart desires, Jupiter. You can have things be lovely and balanced and whole for you in Gemini. And you just have to believe that you can have what you want. And I believe that is the Magician card here. The Magician card here is the Venus and Sun with Uranus Uranus is in Taurus, so kind of backing up Jupiter, saying you need to push forward, expect the unexpected. Things are going to come up that you're not even aware of, that you didn't see. You're going to be blindsided. But Venus with the Sun conjunct Jupiter, saying there are beautiful things ahead, though. There's so many beautiful things ahead. Enjoy this journey through the sign of Gemini, but there are so many beautiful things that you will encounter. So keep moving ahead. The other aspect that I really want to take a look at are two other relatively favorable aspects for Jupiter here on May 25th as Jupiter starts its journey. The first other aspect is Jupiter comes trine to Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. This is a really good one because Pluto in Aquarius retrograde trine Jupiter in Gemini is about deep and personal transformation. And it's going to be deep and personal transformation through expansion of consciousness and brilliant ideas moving into Gemini. And Pluto is totally supporting Jupiter's transformation through this. Now, the other aspect that's happening on this day, or that's happening for a few days actually, is a sextile between Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces. Now, Neptune in Pisces is at 29 degrees Pisces. It's almost to the end here. And it is sextile, giving a helping hand to Jupiter at 0 degrees Gemini, which is absolutely marvelous. And it's really saying, use your imagination to create what you want. Use your imagination to create anything you want. And I really believe that is the Magician card. Use your imagination, Jupiter, to create anything you want, but Pluto wants it to be relatively transforming for you. And again, for you personally, on a personal level, this is the stage. So Jupiter and the other planetary bodies have set the stage for the next 12 months for Jupiter, wherever Jupiter happens to be in transit in your personal chart, okay? That's what's happening here. For example, if Jupiter is in Gemini at the beginning of this transit, if Jupiter is in Gemini in your 11th house, then it might be about changing and transforming your friends and friend groups. It could be that you are transforming the way you interact with friends, or it could be transforming your friend groups altogether to move something toward what you have imagined your friends to be. Because maybe you've outgrown your friend groups. Maybe you've outgrown certain friends. And so as we rapidly shift and change through Gemini, this air sign, you might be testing things out and changing friend groups quite often, or maybe changing friends quite often if this is in your 11th house. Or if Jupiter is in Gemini in your 5th house of pleasure and recreation, it's also about love and romance and dating. It could mean that you are changing and transforming the way you have fun. It could be that you're changing activities. The old activities don't resonate with who you are anymore. That the hobbies that you had before just don't resonate with the hobbies that you want to have now and moving forward. It could mean that you're dating a lot too, if this is happening in your 5th house. So remember, the house that Jupiter's transiting through per your natal chart is going to be an important part of how you experience this. Now, again, look back to 2012, June of 2012 through June of 2013 to really see what you did go through the last time Jupiter was in Gemini. So as you see, we have encountered such a good start to Jupiter's journey, the hero's journey in Gemini. We're going to skip ahead a little bit, and I'm going to do this kind of month by month, just depending on what major aspects happen to be, depending on the major aspects with Jupiter throughout this year. But let's go ahead and jump ahead. Mercury makes a very, very rapid transit through Gemini. Mercury only takes 2 weeks, literally, to transit through Gemini at the beginning here. And 1 month later, on June 25th of 2024, Jupiter's alone in Gemini at 7 degrees and is still trine Pluto in retrograde. I call this the quiet before the storm. It's almost like Jupiter entered into Mercury's house or sign, right? But think of it as like a mansion, okay? So a mansion with many rooms, if you will. Jupiter entered into Mercury's mansion of many rooms in Gemini with a lot to see, a lot to experience, almost too many rooms to experience, right? Maybe there's 100 rooms, too many rooms to experience. And at the beginning of Jupiter's transit in Gemini, Mercury comes home, right? Mercury comes home for a couple of weeks to show Jupiter the ropes. Really, to show Jupiter the ropes. And I believe this is like a mother figure. So it's like the high priestess and the empress together. The high priestess and the empress together. As I mentioned, Mercury does represent consciousness itself, right? It's about bright ideas, connecting one thing to the other thing. And the empress is like talking, hospitality. Here's the beautiful fruit you can eat. You can help yourself to anything in the fridge. And they're going to talk your ear off about their house, right? They're like, look at my garden. Look at the pool you can use. Look at the bedroom. If you want to sleep in this bedroom, that's fine. If you want to go to this bedroom, that's fine. They're all very different. And I really believe that with the rapidity that Mercury transited through Gemini at the beginning of Jupiter's transit through Gemini, it was literally just like Mercury saying, welcome to my house, welcome home. All right, I'm gonna give you the grand tour. It's gonna take a couple weeks, but then I'm out. That's literally what Mercury does. And I really do feel like it was Mercury offering Jupiter some support, being that good hostess, if you will, like saying, look at everything. Look at my gardens, the pool, the jacuzzi. You can use this, you can use that, you can use the fridge, you can cook. Look at all the cool utensils I have in the kitchen. And then Mercury is like, I'm out, bye. You figure this out by your own now. I gave you the grand tour. And Jupiter really is going to be alone in Gemini for a bit. And I really call this the quiet before the storm, because as you know, on any hero's journey, as you journey through any hero's journey, there is a time to reflect and explore on your own. And then you encounter obstacles, challenges, quests to overcome. And that's really what's happening around this time, a month later, on June 25th, before and after, where Jupiter is getting acquainted with Gemini once again. And Jupiter being alone in Gemini is going to allow Jupiter to get reacquainted with this energy. The energy that is faster, the energy that is more frenetic, the energy that's going to give Jupiter brilliant ideas to go this way and that and try out new things. And so it's really this nice time where Jupiter gets to explore Gemini's energy without impediment. However, Jupiter does go into pre-retrograde shadow on July 15th. And by a month later, July 24th, Jupiter is now sharing the journey in Gemini with Mars. So they're sharing Gemini together. It's like Mars entered the mansion and is squaring Saturn, now retrograde in Pisces. So this is where the fun begins. Okay, our next major arcana cards. You got it? Next major arcana cards. We have the Emperor, Saturn. We have the Emperor, Saturn. We have Unity, which is the Hierophant, the religious leader. All right, Saturn, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Squares are not easy for our hero. Squares can be tension and conflict and things that are complex. Saturn, Mr. Emperor here, and Hierophant to some extent, right? Because the Hierophant's really about convention, rules, regulations, following the rules, an organization, a religion, right? It's about everything with boundaries. And Jupiter wants expansion. Jupiter wants to go bigger or go home. Saturn being square, Jupiter in Pisces, right? And now Saturn is retrograde. Saturn and Jupiter are opposite energies. They're opposite energies. But here's the thing. Saturn is in one of Jupiter's signs, Pisces. Saturn is weakened in Pisces. Saturn's harsh boundaries, right? The harsh boundaries. You have to follow these rules and do things this way and do things step by step. And you have to be home by this time. And no, you can't go into that room. And no, you can't go into that room either. Saturn's energy is softened in Pisces, which is one of Jupiter's signs. The other thing though is that Saturn is retrograde, which puts a highlight or an emphasis on Saturn. And the reason why I'm talking so much about this aspect is because this is not the first rodeo that they're gonna go to together in Gemini. This rodeo is gonna go on for quite some time, off and on. But this is the first encounter with this square. So Jupiter in Gemini, Saturn retrograde in Pisces, and of course, Jupiter is in pre-retrograde shadow. So there is this check here there is this check. In this growth pattern, Jupiter wants to pursue many of the intellectual pursuits of Gemini. Jupiter wants to try new ideas. Jupiter maybe wants to try 10 new ideas at once and expand those ideas. Or if this is in your 5th house, Jupiter might want to go on 5 different dates with 5 different people and pursue those 5 different relationships. And Saturn in Pisces is going, no, you really need to think about this. You need to stop. You need to think this through. You might not be making good decisions. And so introspect about it, journal about it, think about it. That might not be the best idea. So literally, the Emperor representing the father time. Maybe you don't have time to go on all those dates. Maybe you don't have time to have 5 different friend groups when maybe you only need 2. Maybe you don't have the time to put out 100 resumes to 100 different companies. Maybe you think that's a good idea, but perhaps you could think about whittling it down to maybe 10. So even though Gemini is giving the excitability to Jupiter of all these brilliant new ideas, Saturn is there in the square going, you need to slow down a bit. Just slow it down. Put yourself in check. So a good way to mitigate this energy is to perhaps journal. Start journaling. Give Saturn what Saturn needs. And that actually was advice given to me by an astrologer I worked with back in 2017 and 2018 when I was just learning about astrology. And I have a very difficult aspect in my natal chart. I do have Jupiter in opposition to my Saturn. I have 5th house Jupiter natally in direct opposition to 11th house Saturn. And they are almost exact. Actually, I think they are exact. They are in exact opposition, which is very tense. It's even more tense than a square. And this astrologer told me in order to deal with those hard aspects with Saturn or any other planet, right? You need to honor them. Honor them. Don't fight them, but honor them. So it's like, I see you, Saturn. I see you there. What's the message you want to give to me? Okay. I may not want to do everything you're saying, just like you might say to your priest or the emperor, the father figure or the grandfather figure. Okay, I might not follow all the rules of the religion, but I'll pick and choose. Maybe the ones that make the most sense to me, I'll follow them. I'll honor that. Or if the dad or the grandfather puts the rules down, okay, I'll think about those rules and I might follow a few. But you want to give those hard aspects something to honor them. Another player that has just entered, as I mentioned, was Mars has entered Gemini, and that player is going to have a bigger role, especially on the world stage a little bit later this summer. I'd like to hop forward to August. I talked about things getting a little tough. They're getting a little tough. I'll tell you that right now. In August, August seems to be a relatively challenging month for this set of aspects. As I mentioned, there's always something to be learned in the difficult aspects. These are the challenges. This is something to be learned. I feel that if you can learn from the very challenging and difficult aspects, then you will be golden. I really do also feel that on the world stage, perhaps not on so much on a personal level, but on the world stage, August is going to be challenging. And here is why. We will have Jupiter and Mars conjunct in Gemini. Now, Mars, the warring planet, the planet of conflict, aggression, it is conjunct Jupiter. Jupiter expands, so it might expand conflict, expand aggression, expand action, which could be positive if you use it for the positive. But now they are both squaring Saturn. And on August 21st, they both happen to be squaring Venus. And Venus is in Virgo. Venus in Virgo is more about details and more serious and getting things done, but slowing it down a little bit. We've got a couple of squares here. We have got Mars square Saturn, whereas Mars is conjunct Jupiter. Again, this can create a lot of resistance. This is resistance. This is something that can turn into something that's not pretty, if you will. I would say stay away from arguments, stay away from conflict, be conflict averse. The energy that you might want to go toward, even though it's a square, would be that Venus in Virgo. That might be the energy you want to go toward, and kind of moving away from that Saturn energy at this time. It could mean fights in relationships. That's the thing too with that Mars conjunct Jupiter square Venus in Virgo. You have some help here, and I will talk very, very soon about this Chiron sextile to Jupiter. This Chiron sextile to Jupiter, I believe, is giving a salve, a healing balm, almost the entire time that Jupiter is in Gemini. Chiron in Aries is giving a healing balm to Jupiter in Gemini. It's like the doctor. Okay, that's what I'm going to equate it to. Chiron is like the in-house doctor, the in-mansion doctor in Gemini for Jupiter specifically. It's like Chiron is assigned to be the in-house doctor, the in-house guru, if you will, I love it. I love that analogy because I think it's so true. There's so much going on here. The other thing I want to say for this connection, this square, Mars conjunct Jupiter square Saturn in Pisces, and Saturn, of course, is still retrograde in Pisces, is learning to balance your energy. Learning to balance your energy. That is going to be so important. You need an outlet for that. An outlet for that could be meditation. It could be doing some sports, doing some athletics, but you're really going to need to learn to balance that tension and that stress and that energy. It's going to be really important during this time. And again, not to get roped into conflict. That's the primary thing. Don't get roped into conflict during this time. By September 25th of 2024, Jupiter will be out of its square with Saturn, and it'll be alone once again in Gemini. For a few days prior to this date, it will have squared Mercury in Virgo, but other than that, Jupiter will have a rest here to integrate the lessons learned. It's still moving forward, but it will go retrograde on October 9th. So let's look at the tarot, the major Arcana tarot cards that I believe is representative of this. I have the Chariot card, which is a rapid moving energy, still moving forward. I believe this is a Gemini card, actually, because there's the yin yang, the white horse, the black horse, moving forward rapidly. Transportation, right? Mercury, transportation, Gemini, transportation, forward. Jupiter by itself is still moving forward. It's not yet in retrograde. It has slowed down, but it's still moving forward through Gemini. So it's moving forward. It's by itself. It's learning its lessons. It's integrating its lessons, but it does have its hermit moments. Okay. It does have its hermit moments here right before another harsh aspect. So it does have time to think about things, to integrate. Again, it's another calm moment where it's alone in Gemini, where it doesn't have the pressures in Gemini. And it's still, interestingly enough, it is still sextile Chiron. And I'm going to show you, I want to show you. Okay, I think it's coming up on the Chiron aspects that I really want to show you. So on October 25th, 2024, Jupiter has regressed. Remember, it's now retrograde. It has regressed to 20 degrees, Gemini, 52 minutes, revisiting. It's revisiting those degrees when it was still in square with retrograde Saturn. So it is recapping, revisiting, going back to those degrees and reflecting. And really, that is the hermit energy. It's still reflecting. what did I do right? What did I do wrong? How did things go? It's still reflecting. One interesting aspect that I'd like to note is that Jupiter has been in sextile with Chiron. It has been in sextile with Chiron since August 18th. And prior to that, it was septile, S-E-P-T-I-L-E, to Chiron. Now, a sextile, as I mentioned, is a helping hand, and a septile is a fated connection. Fate. It's something that fate brings in. Now, if you have viewed my Mercury conjunct Chiron in Aries video that I posted probably a month or two ago, I'm going to post that link right here so you can review it. There have been so many planets coming conjunct with Chiron in the past several months, but Mercury most particularly. And why this counts? Why does this count? Because Mercury is the ruler of Gemini. Mercury came into conjunction with Chiron 3 times. And this, of course, brought up a lot of inner childhood wounds pertaining to communication, self-expression, and how you convey your message to another. Now, Jupiter is in Gemini, which is Mercury's sign, and it is getting a helping hand from Chiron, either in a septile fated connection or a sextile, a helping hand. Now, what I look at this as is the Lover's card. Now, you might be thinking, that is completely absurd. Chiron's the wounded healer. How in the world did you get that? Here's why. Most people don't know this, that traditionally, the Lover's card is a card of healing. It is a healing card. It is self-healing. It represents the yin and the yang. It represents the ego and the higher self. And the Lover's card is about rectifying, healing that. In the Angel Tarot, it is represented by Archangel Raphael, the Archangel of healing. And so when I said that Jupiter in Gemini has an in-house doctor, which is Chiron, that's what this is. It's not even like they're living together, they're conjunct, they're in the same house, the same mansion, as I mentioned, but maybe Chiron being a couple signs away, right? Chiron has a pool house, right? Has a pool house on property, or has its own doctor's house on property. But it's really helping Jupiter out however it can, whenever it can, sometimes through heaven's help, fated connection, and sometimes through a simple helping hand. But I find this particularly special. This connection between Jupiter and Chiron for practically the entire journey, this goes on the entire year, the entire journey that Jupiter is in Gemini, it sticks out like a sore thumb. Like, it sticks out. And I really believe that it is Chiron's kindness and compassion. Because if you know the story of Chiron, the wounded healer, it's like Chiron was hurting, has this wound that does not heal. But then Chiron goes out and doctors others, right? Helps to heal others. And I really feel that Chiron is there supporting Jupiter and Mercury's sign, going, we're still going to heal those wounds of communication, of getting your message across, of self-expression, of new ideas, of helping you evolve and change and move into higher consciousness. We're going to help you to do that. Together, it's like we're partners here. We're gonna move through this together. And I think that is an actual beautiful, beautiful connection. And it's so important because more challenges are up ahead for Jupiter. More challenges, more karma. So we move ahead to November 25th. Jupiter is still retrograde, and it's made its second square to Saturn in Pisces because Jupiter went retrograde. And Saturn is now direct on November 19th. It is also in opposition to Mercury in Sagittarius, which is Jupiter's home sign. So Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, and Jupiter is also the co-ruler of Pisces. This tension between Saturn as a square, right, and Mercury by opposition continues until December 27th. Mercury is then conjoined by the Sun in Sagittarius on December 2nd, my birthday, and will travel with Mercury in opposition to Jupiter until December 7th. This is going to be, again, a bit of a challenge. I believe that this is the karmic wheel. This is the karmic wheel. This is karma. This is something that Jupiter in Gemini is still working out, being square to Saturn. It is something that is still this tension, this stress, this I want to move forward and I want these new ideas and I want to communicate this and I want to be able to express myself in this way. And Saturn's still on some level holding Jupiter back. But now the opposition with Mercury in Sagittarius, which is called mutual reception, right? That's mutual reception because Jupiter is in Mercury's sign. Mercury is in Jupiter's sign. So that's called mutual reception, which it tends to work. Honestly, that does tend to work, but there's still this discomfort. Let's just put it that way. It's just uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable. It's almost like if you do a house swap with somebody and it's like friendly because you're doing a house swap with somebody. You're like, I'm going on vacation for Thanksgiving, so you can stay in my house in California and I'll go stay in your house in Paris. And so it's agreed to, so it's relatively friendly. But then during that time, you're obsessing and thinking about like, well, what if they're not putting things back in the right place? And the other person's thinking, well, what if they make a mess that I can't clean up? And what if they don't take out my dog? Or, so it's like that tension of not knowing what the other person's gonna do. And so there is this like, it's just very tense. And then with Saturn there with a square, it's just even more tense. So that is going to go on until December 7th. And I believe that's really karmically figuring out what your weaknesses are, karmically figuring out how you're going to move through that, how you're going to manage those opposing energies. How are you going to manage that? That's a test. It's a quest and it's a test for you. And if you pass the test with flying colors, you get to move forward. And if you don't pass the test, you're going to have to repeat it. And we move forward to Christmas Day, December 25th of 2024. Do you see me smiling? Do you see me smile here? We have got more karma ahead. And I believe that our hero has reached the Strength card. Our hero has reached the Strength. We've still got the karma. We still have the karma. It's still happening. But our hero here on December 25th, 2024 has reached the Strength card. This is another big test. It is another big test. And my advice to you for Christmas of 2024 is to keep your gatherings small. Jupiter's gonna want to do the whole spread and have the Christmas carols and have the campfire and the roasted marshmallows and the schedule going in many directions and too many things on the plate. This Christmas, keep it small and tame. Really, keep it small and tame. I'm putting the chart up for the aspects for Christmas Day. As you can see here, we have Jupiter in the second opposition to Mercury in Sag. This is the second time this is happening. As I mentioned, think of the house swap. Think of the tensions of like, are they using my stuff? Are they putting my stuff back? Are they using too many rooms, which is Mercury saying? Are they going to all the rooms, messing up all the stuff? We still have our support from Chiron, but look at this. We have a square to Saturn that's happening once again. Jupiter is square Saturn in Pisces, and it is septile to Mars in Leo. Now, Mars in Leo is about individuality, individual strength, individuality. It's yang, right? It's a yang sign. And that's why I said I believe that the best bet for Christmas is to not mess up Mercury's house too much, is to not mess up Jupiter and Gemini too much. Saturn's there watching you, saying, you want to do 10,000 things around Christmas time? Forget it. Make it small, make it tame. Be conscientious. Don't try too many new things. Pick a few things and stick with it. And Mars in Leo is saying, use your dramatic flair. It's subtle. Remember, it's fated. This is something that is meant to happen. So Mars in Leo could just be take actions which are going to show your individuality, and let you shine. Let you shine for Christmas. Not doing what everybody else is doing, not doing 10,000 things, Jupiter and Gemini, to just show off like, I can do this all. I can bake the entire Christmas recipe menu from A to Z all by myself. Show your individual flair during this time, but keep it relatively tame, keep it relatively small. On January 18th, 2025, retrograde Jupiter in Gemini is still squaring Saturn, now conjunct Venus at 16 degrees Pisces, and Jupiter is also in conjunct, which is disharmonious, is in conjunct Mercury now in Capricorn at 15 degrees. Saturn conjunct Venus in Pisces is actually, this is actually nice, if you will, for Jupiter. It is nice for Jupiter because Venus is liking the yin sign of Pisces, and being conjunct with Saturn, father time, the more stern parent, is kind of like having a really nice mother-father blend, or having a nice aunt and father blend for Jupiter to experience whatever this square is bringing to the surface. So it's actually quite nice. I would just watch out for communication with that in conjunct with Mercury. Let's hop forward to January 30th of 2025, because Jupiter retrograde is finally out of the square with Saturn and gets a rest. Oh yes, okay. I believe that this is 12 and 13. We are having the Hanged Man, and we are having the Release, which is the Death card. I really do believe that whatever has been holding you back with the Jupiter-Saturn square is now being released. It's like relief and release. This is the relief and the release aspect. Whatever you've been struggling with the Jupiter-Saturn square, it's finally just being released. You're starting to see things in a very different light. You might be even saying, like, that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Like, whatever was happening at the time, I thought it was going to be worse, and it's really just not as bad as I thought it would be. Of course, we still have Chiron in that favorable aspect to Jupiter. It's now septile. And then the next day, Mercury conjoins the Sun in Aquarius, and Jupiter benefits from both the trine of Sun and Mercury for a few days. So actually, after that tension, even with Mercury, now the trine with Mercury, the Sun, and Jupiter is going to give a nice respite, a nice, beautiful aspect of flow to communication. So that's why I said it's more the awakening and the release. The release of communication tension, and the awakening is like seeing things in a very, very different light, that whatever was going on during those very tense aspects, Jupiter, Mars, square Saturn, and then Jupiter square Saturn, whichever was happening, and even the inconjunct and the opposition to Mercury, whatever was happening during that, it really wasn't that bad. Like, I understand why it was there. There is this understanding for the transformation. Like, I understand why it had to happen. I understand why it was there now. On February 4th, 2025, Jupiter stations direct in Gemini. On February 17th of 2025, Jupiter has relative ease until it squares Mercury now in Pisces, followed with a square to the Sun in Pisces a few days later. These are pretty rapid transits, so I wouldn't say like you need to watch out. So what I would say is that this is the time for Jupiter to find its balance in Gemini. It's finding its balance point. It's finally learning. I don't need to go all out. I don't need to try 100 ideas. I don't need to do 100 things. I don't need to discover everything there is to discover. I know now with these lessons through Saturn, I know now how to balance my energies and try a few things, but then wait to see if those things work themselves out. Let's jump forward. We're going to jump forward to April 22nd of 2025. There's something I really want to point out here. It is Jupiter coming into a square with the North and South nodes, which are now in Pisces and Virgo. We're talking squares here. We're talking a square here. Jupiter will be in a square with the North and South node for several weeks from this date. And of course, the nodes change signs on January 28th of 2025. In evolutionary astrology, squares to the nodes represent a skipped step. It represents something that you missed along the way. So let's present our next two major arcana cards here. So as I mentioned, Jupiter was balancing its energies. Really, in Gemini, so hard to balance energies. Have you ever seen a Gemini when they're super excited and trying a billion things? So it's really hard, but with the nodes, the square to the lunar nodes, Jupiter skipped a step. So we have the ego card and we have the life experience, which is the Tower card. I believe with the skip steps, sometimes our hero on the hero's journey can get too caught up in what they want and not see the bigger picture. What is our problem with Jupiter and Gemini? Gemini is not bigger picture at all. And so Jupiter, when it's getting absorbed in the energy of Gemini for this long of a time, because look, we're already in April. It has been nearly a year since Jupiter has been in Gemini's energy. Certainly during that year, Jupiter has absorbed the energy of Gemini. There can be this sense of, this is what I want, this is what I'm going to experience, and not going so deep. And that's the ego getting in the way of like, I'm just going to have everything I want. It could be overindulgence in too many things, too much niceness, too much fun, too much this. And the Tower card is here to show Jupiter, you need to make a course correction. You need to make some changes. You might have skipped a few steps, and that's what the square to the nodes represents. You might have skipped a few steps. You may need to go back and fix a few things. And so for you personally, in your journey during this year with Jupiter in whatever house it happens to be in, were there steps that you did skip? Did you skip a few steps along the way? And you might not know this until we reach this point. But for example, if you used this for your 8th house, for example, and you have been starting a side hustle and you haven't paid your taxes, for example, like you're like, wow, this side hustle's working really well. I'm going to start a second side hustle. You start the second side hustle. Oh, wow, this works really, really well too. And you start a third one. Oh my God, I'm having so much income, so much greatness. And then you realize, oh my God, it's April 15th and I didn't realize you had to pay taxes on all these side hustles. So Jupiter now square the lunar nodes. It's like, no, the tax man is coming for you. You better go back and redo your accounting and realize that you owe this much money. So that could be the skip step, for example. I love what happens on June 4th as we move forward and we are almost to the end of our hero's journey. I love what is happening. The the star of destiny, and nonetheless, the sun. The star of destiny and the sun. I love what is happening here. It is so gorgeous, so beautiful. On June 4th is Mercury conjoins Jupiter in Gemini as Jupiter prepares for his exit. So it's like Mercury is saying, hey, job well done, job well done. I've looked at my mansion. Thank you for taking care of my mansion. You've done a great job this year. I really appreciate you taking care of my mansion, cleaning it up, going through the houses, experiencing it, tending to the garden, enjoying yourself in the pool, inviting guests over, but cleaning up afterward. Mercury is really just helping Jupiter by giving Jupiter a little pat on the back and saying, you did well in my sign. Thank you for being here. I welcome you. I really feel like that's the star, like the star of destiny with the sun. It's like, here we are. We are again in Gemini season with the sun in Gemini. And I believe that this time, June 6th especially, is the life review. The life review, the judgment. Jupiter, by June 6th, is assessing where Jupiter has been through this hero's journey. And here is why. On June 6th, we have Mercury and Jupiter conjunct in a square with Saturn. There's the old Saturn again. But Saturn is now conjunct Neptune, and they're in Aries. I love it. They're now in Aries. So they're in a square. So Aries, the fire sign, right? And once again, Jupiter finds its square with Saturn. Now, conjunct Mercury. Mercury is the host. And I really feel like that is the renewal card. That is the judgment card. That is like, what have you done this past year? What have you done this past year? And it's funny with Saturn and Neptune that are connected, that they're conjunct, because Saturn being the strict parent, and then Neptune is like, just smoke a joint and lay back, man. Dissolve the boundaries. Free love. Let's all love one another. And I really feel like this is the judgment day for Jupiter throughout its journey in Gemini. And it's like, did you do the things you wanted to do? Did you experience the things you wanted to experience? Did you do things that were beyond your wildest dreams? But then Saturn's there going, did you learn your lessons too? Did you actually learn the lessons? And then finally, we have our completion with our hero, with the World card, the completion. On June 9th of 2025, Jupiter ingresses into Cancer at 0 degrees while still conjunct Mercury at 2 degrees Cancer, because Mercury's now said, see ya, it's my time to go into Cancer. And actually, so as Jupiter is ready to ingress into Cancer, it'll still be with Mercury. They've made friends. They've been pals now. There's been some tension throughout the year, but now they're pals. There is still this square with Saturn and Neptune in Aries. But look at this. There's still that beautiful sextile with Chiron, and now there's a sextile with Venus. So Venus is sending Jupiter off into Cancer with some love. There's also this sextile to Mars, which again is a very easy and familiar and nice helping hand. Then we have these two inconjuncts. We have an inconjunct with Pluto and we have an inconjunct with the moon. But overall, I really believe that our hero has really had a lot of healing and expansion and personal transformation throughout its journey in Gemini. And anything that you are personally learning on your journey with Jupiter in Gemini, come back to the video to see where the part of the hero's journey that it might apply to you. And all you need to do is plug in the house. That's all you need to do is plug in your house, and that's where it'll make the most sense for you. So for example, I will give you one last example before we sign off. I know the video's been long, but for example, if you have Gemini in your second house and Jupiter is traversing your second house in Gemini, it's going to depend on what other planets natally are in your second house, of course, that Jupiter might go across. but also the second house is about money and resources. And so what you are learning through this time has to do with your income, how you make money, how you spend money, and your resources, what is coming in, your income. And so all these lessons with the squares to Saturn, with the oppositions to Mercury, that's all going to depend on everything that's going on in your second house. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed this way of looking at a longer transit. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for subscribing to my channel below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications, and thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. Thank you for sharing this video with others who really want to learn more about astrology. And thank you so much for your support of my YouTube channel. You can buy one of my 11 published books. You can book a reading with me, and I will see you in the next video.